Good afternoon. It's just after 1 o'clock on Wednesday, the 22nd of October, 2025. Welcome to UK Column News. I'm your host, Charles Malet. And do not adjust your set. I have Mark Anderson in the studio with me today. Welcome to the programme and the United Kingdom, Mark.
Great to be here again, Charles. First time with you.
Yeah, excellent. Good man. And we have Vanessa Beeley via live link. Welcome to the programme, Vanessa. Now, today we've got a lot to get through, as always, but we're going to be looking at the relationship between trust, consent and medical ethics with regard to vaccinations. We're going to have a look forward to the conference of the parties. It's that time again, COP30 on the horizon, as well as smart cities and the tensions in Venezuela, specifically the relationship between Maduro and Trump, and indeed football hooliganism and interference with police decision-making processes. And also we will have a short film to show you from our excellent weekend event in York. But we're going to start today with a closer look at Amazon Web Services, which of course had its outage on Monday, as reported on the UK Column News programme at that point, shown here on the BBC front page from that time. Now, Amazon themselves have what they call a service health dashboard, and this is showing the problem as it was articulated on the day. Now, of course, a whole load of what might be considered technical gobbledygook, but the point of it is to follow at the bottom, which is just coming on screen now, and lists the enormous number of Amazon Web Services that were affected by this, a total of 67 services. Now, they might not mean much to you, and certainly if you're not watching the programme and just listening, they are far too many to list, but the point of it, of course, is it does show the dependence that we have, whether or not we know it, upon Amazon services. And perhaps not just Amazon, but of course, technical services in general, and how much of our lives are controlled, to some degree at least, by Amazon Web Services. Now, earlier this summer, Tussle printed a Tech Titans report going back to June, and they were looking at the most powerful organizations in the tech sector. And a graph that they produced here indicates to the right, going from on the left 2019, 2020 up to 2023, 24, a total of nearly £20 billion spend in this area. And of course, as I said at the outset, this is something that a lot of people have very little idea about how it manifests. So the purpose of this report really is just to give a slightly greater insight into the effect that this does have on our lives and indeed our government, and how we may not be necessarily kept in the picture with regard to this. Now, also in the report, and a point I would like to draw out, is how little of this control by tech companies actually is held within the UK shores. There's a graph on screen now, and only the very bottom part of the graph, shown in the green colour, indicates the control of UK-based companies. In other words, the majority of all the tech services the government does purchase, and indeed the services that you might use are not controlled from within this country. And that is a point that merits significant consideration. The other thing, and this was referenced very much by Brian Garish on Monday, is that Amazon Web Services is involved in digital identity, of course, and that's run via what it describes as its AWS Outposts service. Now, on the Outposts website, I will just quote in order that you get an idea of what this is all about. They say that digital public infrastructure, DPI, is the foundation of modern government service delivery and an inclusive digital economy. Digital identity is one of the foundational pillars of DPI, which, if widely adopted, can deliver significant economic impact by streamlining services and enable financial inclusion for previously underserved populations. Now, you will have heard most of that before, but I would say that the key clause there is if widely adopted. And of course, the fallout from that is that there is an implied task for not just UK column viewers, but anybody that is troubled by the idea of where this may go. Now, AWS Outposts go on to say, Digital identity systems present unique implementation challenges because they manage highly sensitive citizen information, from biometric data and demographic details to authentication credentials, and that these systems require reliable security measures and strict data governance frameworks to protect citizen privacy while enabling secure service delivery. Now, this continues in a similar vein. And of course, they go on to describe not just how sensitive a lot of the information is that they handle, but how the cloud features, what they describe, the advanced cloud features are there for scalability and security. But of course, it's instances like that which happened on Monday, which give rise to completely legitimate concern about whether or not they are actually able to manage the sorts of problems which they describe, or at least describe as having the antidote against. Now, the wiring diagram on screen now is fiendishly complicated, and this is what AWS Outpost puts out to articulate how it is that you do create a digital identity. And I think the inference really is that you could go for this, or indeed something a little bit more simple, which is less likely to disintegrate. So the case for digital identity, and this is not just to have a go at AWS necessarily, but of course, in the main, the technical vulnerability of such a system, as well as the very real and well sort of articulated concerns over liberty and so much else besides. But ultimately, what this outage does demonstrate is that these systems that are running huge swathes of our lives are actually vulnerable to all sorts of problems, and this is one of them. Now, to go into what I mean about the areas of control that might not necessarily be talked about, defence is one. I have spoken about it on UK Column News before. We're just going to have a look at how the Amazon Web Services is now enmeshed with the UK defence or indeed war industry. But we will come back to it later. What I will do is I'll just go on to the next point of this report, because essentially the nuts and bolts of it, as discussed before, are that not only does Amazon Web Services hold control over many of the communication systems and therefore the passage of information for the UK defence industry, but also the weapon systems themselves. Now, there are several reasons that is of concern, not least because of the 2023 update that I'm about to show from the finance ministry in Israel, referencing, and this, of course, articulates a direct link between Amazon Web Services, the government of Israel, and the IDF. And the statement here, if we can just pop that on the screen, says that Project Nimbus is a multi-year flagship project and the first of its kind in the Israeli government, which is led by the Accountant General of the Ministry of Finance, through the Government Procurement Administration, together with the Israel National Digital Agency, the Israel National Cyber Directorate, the Ministry of Defense, the Israel Defense Force, and other partners in the government. So here we have Amazon Web Services owning biometric data, which pertains to digital identity. And at the same time, it runs the defense systems, not just of the UK and Israel, but many other countries around the world. And this is in the same era that we have facial recognition technology, which may be applied to autonomous drones. So it's not just that it's completely inappropriate, it challenges the very laws of armed conflict, amongst many other things. Mark, you've sat through some of this now. What are your thoughts on Amazon's sort of control mechanisms and whatnot?
Well, the way the dots all connect, although it's a preliminary judgment on my part, it just, you wonder how much seepage there'll be, how much cross-pollination there'll be of data, personal data going to the wrong places, to say nothing of how our passports, a physical thing, could become merely digital. And there's actually a process for that is referred to as dematerialization. You get rid of ATMs, you only have digital bank accounts. You get rid of passports, you only have digital passports. It's the same evolutionary process.
Absolutely. Terrific vulnerability and a good point. Well made. Now, the other area, of course, Amazon is involved in, less to do with digital in a way, but obviously very much related, is food. And the current report, or the most recent report from the Groceries Code Adjudicator, shows, among many other things, the way in which Amazon is regarded by those that deal with it. Now, if we can just put the slide on screen, we'll just look at this graph from the report, which on the very right-hand side, box there in green, shows Amazon right down at the bottom of the heap, compared with the other retailers. Now, I'm not in any way suggesting that the other retailers, therefore, should be regarded as very good just because Amazon are bad. But the point remains that that Amazon's relationship with the suppliers that they deal with is absolutely below par. And in fact, the adjudicator has started an investigation into Amazon food, having said, quote, they have reasonable grounds to suspect that Amazon has breached paragraph 5 of the code, which deals with no delay in payments, between the 1st of March 2022 all the way until the 20th of June 2025. And this, again, is greatly significant. Now, whilst on the subject of food, it's come to our attention that there's been an article published in the Times on Sunday saying top farm manager cancels contract amid struggle to make money. And they cite a statement that was made by Velcourt, particularly effectively making the suggestion not only that Velcourt have cancelled 20% of their contracts, but also that the immediate reaction to that will be that solar farms will go across all this land. Now, UKC Verify is going to be applied to this particular slide. And the reason for that is that I got in touch with Velcourt on reading this article, and I spoke to the chief executive, Nick Shorter, and Nick was very gracious in giving his time, but he was also at pains to point out that, first of all, neither Farmers Weekly, who'd printed the same story a week prior, or indeed the Sunday Times, had actually bothered to get in touch with Velcourt or him. And so if you're wondering what it is about UK Column that does set it apart, I would say this is a very good example of exactly why we do what we do in the way that we do it. And whilst there is certainly substance to there is the changes in contract, what it is that Velcourt are suggesting is that for a variety of reasons, which are articulated in their statement, they talk about underlying inflation, removal of the basic payment scheme, cessation of SFI, and a depressed commodity market. So effectively what they're saying is that the conditions for arable farming are very, very poor. And what should be clarified really in relation to the Times article is that they don't have tenancies, and indeed they don't have any dealings with solar farms whatsoever. But the point that Nick made when speaking to me was that the way that the government set the conditions now for farming, whilst at the same time suggesting they do support farmers, whilst actively not supporting either farmers or indeed the production of food, the incentive specifically with regard to solar, which is why the Times would have suggested such a thing, is that a farmer may attract a guaranteed income of, say, £1,000 an acre, index-linked, over a 30-year period. And with all the factors that Velcourt refers to, it's very easy to see why farmers would be dragged in that direction. Now, there will be more on that, but of course the link there was that Amazon not only has relations to all the technical things that we've spoken about, but specifically, of course, the food you eat and indeed the way that that very food industry is controlled. That concludes that report now. And as I say, sorry for the various delays during it. We're now going to go to Mark, who has a case of vaccine injury in the Isle of Man. Mark, what are the details of this?
Well, as this first slide shows, I was doing some research in the immediate wake of our On Location event, and it was a health-oriented event. And in fact, both my reports today are in some way stemming from those sorts of themes. Anyway, in the Isle of Man, I discovered a woman, Nicola Brindley, who suffered severe reaction, she says, to the COVID jab. And she says the symptoms are now worse than ever. And this is from, get this, the Isle of Man Today, a conventional media organ. So for the conventional media to even be saying this is a story in and of itself. Keep that in mind. Now, in this next item, this is stemming from the article in the Isle of Man Today. This long, healthy mother and former dental nurse from the Isle of Man received her first dose of the AstraZeneca COVID-19 vector non-mRNA vaccine. That's important. In July 2021, she soon experienced what she described as a severe allergic reaction to it. And get this is her resilience. Despite her lingering health issues, she now runs a vaccine injury support group. So she's taken on a lot, it appears. And here's a quote from her. I think more needs to be done on things like informed consent, very important, and having the right to make your own medical decisions. What could possibly be wrong with that? And here's some of what she's reportedly suffering from, various maladies. She says she suffers from multiple chronic health issues, abdominal cramps, joint problems, breathlessness, swollen lymph nodes, rib pain, repeated flu-like symptoms, overwhelming fatigue, and often relies on a wheelchair. A tough situation indeed. Another quote, she was quoted as saying, "We wrote to multiple MHKs." Now that's members of the House of Keys, the lower parliament on the Isle of Man, on this, and have had little or no response or willingness to even take it. My symptoms are still as severe as ever. It's affected pretty much my whole body, quote unquote. Now, shifting gears a little bit, I've been covering quite a bit about Exercise Pegasus, the largest pandemic rehearsal, as far as we can tell, in the UK's history, and one of the most active and largest of any country currently. Although there have been a lot of exercises over the years going back into the early 2000s. But here's a headline. I actually found some mainstream media news about Exercise Pegasus, which is no easy feat. Concerns over biggest pandemic exercise ever are undertaken in the UK. Concerns. Okay, what kind of concerns, right? So we'll move on from there and read about what sort of concerns. Now, these concerns might not be the kind of concerns that UK column members and viewers would share, but Exercise Pegasus, biggest ever, is behind closed doors. This is one thing that we're finding out. The biggest pandemic exercise in UK's history, it started around mid-September, but a group representing the relatives of Welsh COVID-19 victims is not convinced that this exercise will be comprehensive, and they fear past mistakes may be repeated, yet the Welsh government says it's fully engaged with the planning for this Tier 1 national level pandemic exercise, according to the Welsh media outlet nation.cymru.com. Now, this is a group of people, relatives of Welsh COVID-19 victims, that are concerned that they're not being strict enough, that they're not maybe being vigilant enough on giving the vaccine, which is a far cry from what Nicola Brindley is experiencing. So we have to pay attention to the contrast here. Now, I looked up what AI had to say on this. We all get curious about that, right? AI reflects on the status doublespeak on Exercise Pegasus. And this is what AI told me, literally verbatim. Exercise Pegasus in the UK is being conducted openly with high-level participation and public commitments to share the findings. However, the actual simulation exercises are taking place behind closed doors. So it's openly behind closed doors, right? Just what we like to see. Now, as we look at a more optimistic note on this, and we look at what's coming up in the wake of our on location in York, Dr. Andrew Wakefield is now going to speak again on November 7th through 9 in Austin, Texas, not far from my stomping grounds. I'm not sure I can make it, but maybe I can cover it virtually. And this is being put on, of all places, by Children's Health Defense, the outfit that RFK Jr., the current HHS chief, started. And there's also other familiar faces there, Senator Ron Johnson, Steve Bannon, formerly with the Trump administration, and Catherine Austin Fitts, who I believe UK Column has interviewed, as well as Senator Ron Paul. I met him about 12 years ago, Mackinac Island, Michigan. But there'll be much more coming out there in terms of what's going on around the world and in the United States. But one thing I picked up as I read about the Austin event, and I've seen this elsewhere, is there's a lot of stress on vaccine safety. And one of the Children's Health Defense quotes about this upcoming event said this: participate in interactive sessions on informed consent, health, EMR wireless, vaccine safety, parental rights, and more. Now, many of us might wince at vaccine safety because they seem to be implying that if we can make the vaccine safe, do some more testing, do some updated vaccines, that maybe we can leave the door open a little bit. Many of us might find that objectionable, but we at least need to be aware of it at any case. So that's an important footnote. Lastly, I'm just dredging this up out of the files of the World Health Organization. Back on the 14th of August, 2024, was the last time that the WHO made a major public health emergency of international concern declaration. Whenever there's a pandemic, they officially call that out, a public health emergency of international concern. And this had to do with monkeypox. Of course, we've heard about bird flu being another potential candidate for the next pandemic. And then we wonder what might happen during or after Exercise Pegasus in the UK, which is supposed to wind up mid to latter November. So keep an eye on the World Health Organization. If they make any such similar declarations, then we know that the fix might be in, or at the very least, we know we got to be very vigilant about what's going on. So with that, back to you, Charles.
Yeah, no, super, Mark. Absolutely correct. And I think mpox is what you mean these days. We've had an update, and for those listeners in Wales jumping up and down, Mark should get the benefit of the doubt, having not actually crossed the border on this particular trip. But Cymru was the word that should have come out, I think, Mark, for future reference. Mark, thank you very much indeed. Now, Vanessa, Donald Trump's been making waves again, but perhaps not the right sort.
Are they ever the right sort? I would possibly question. Yes, Venezuela is back in the crosshairs with some earnestness from Trump and his administration and the CIA and the US Marines. I would say there's a huge amount of misinformation surrounding this particular campaign by Trump right now. Yesterday, I was very lucky to speak to the Venezuela ambassador to Lebanon and Syria, who I've known since 2017 in Damascus. And UK Column are going to be interviewing him precisely about what's happening in Venezuela in the next few days. But let's have a look at the first headline. Trump says he authorized the CIA in Venezuela. As guess what? Maduro says no to regime change. So no big surprises there. A bit of a crazy title there from none other than the BBC. So this was in Axios. Trump's Venezuela operation expands in the dark. So far, 32 people have been murdered by President Trump's strikes, 7 strikes in the northeastern area in the Caribbean Sea off the coast of Venezuela. Of course, he's not informed Congress. He's not informed the American people. He's building up B-52 planes, warships, spy planes, drones, and US Marines off the same coast. Rand Paul has been quoted as saying they have absolutely no evidence and they're not presenting evidence for those that they've murdered. In one of the most recent strikes, there were apparently 2 survivors who've been repatriated rather than being put in prison in El Salvador, which of course is another form of Abu Ghraib, very much backed by President Trump. They've been repatriated to Ecuador and Colombia, not to Venezuela, of course, remembering that Maduro has a $50 million bounty on his head, 5 times that of the bounty that has now been lifted off a Takfiri terrorist, unelected president of Syria, Jolani, that was only 10 million. So that gives you an idea of the importance of regime change in Venezuela for successive American administrations, but particularly for President Trump. So let's have a look at, I apologize. Well, I don't really apologize because it's Trump's bad language. I'm not in control of that. But there is bad language in the video from President Trump. So let's roll that.
President, it has been reported that Maduro offered everything in his country, all the natural resources. He even recorded a message to you in English recently, offering mediation. What should we do in order to stop that?
He has offered everything. He's offered everything. You're right. You know why? Because he doesn't want to fuck around with the United States.
So Trump, in his usual diplomatic, divisive manner. However, he's basing that statement entirely on fake news. And here are some selections of the fake news that is circulating in mainstream media. This in The Guardian. Trump claims Maduro is willing to give everything to ease US tensions. Fake news. The second one, and this is, I think, from the New York Times, Venezuela's Maduro offered the US his nation's riches to avoid conflict. Fake news. And finally, from Associated Press, Venezuela floated a plan. So this is officials in Venezuela, allegedly fake news, floated a plan for Maduro to slowly give up power, but was rejected by the United States. So I do have to say, according to the ambassador here in Lebanon, all of this is fake news and denied by Maduro and his administration. And then, of course, we have to look at who received the Nobel Peace Prize, not Trump. But don't worry, people, because Marina Corina Machado called Trump to tell him that he should have had the Nobel Peace Prize. However, she then put out a statement saying Venezuela is in chaos under the current regime. So, of course, she's the new Juan Guaido, picked by Trump to be a replacement for Maduro when Trump manages his regime change in Venezuela with one of the most popular leaders in the world today, I would add, in Venezuela. She then went on to call Netanyahu and Israel. And of course, there is the scandal of her having signed an agreement with the Likud party in Israel previously. All of that is documented. So she called Netanyahu, and what did she say in the phone call? Well, there should be no surprises. We also have to remember that Venezuela has regularly, both by Trump and by Israel, been linked to Hezbollah, the Lebanese resistance, and to Iran. So in the statement that was published by the Israeli government, she said that she appreciates Netanyahu's decisions and resolute actions in the genocide in Gaza. She appreciates the relentless struggle against the Iranian axis of evil, which is also, according to her, as I said, active against Venezuela, or should be actually inside Venezuela, I think, sorry. So effectively there, that pretty much demonstrates what the new campaign is, but it includes, and this is the new part, if you like, the long-running claims that Venezuela, and particularly Maduro, is involved in basically being a narco state, running drugs. But let's have a look at where the strikes have been coming in. As I said, it's the northeastern coast of Venezuela. If we actually look, the ambassador told me that something like 80 to 85% of the drug running comes from the Pacific side to the west of Latin America, so from countries like Ecuador, Peru, and Colombia, coming up the west coast of the Americas there. And very little of it actually comes out of Venezuela. I think it's something like between 5 and 7%, according to various estimates, including UN reports. And then if we have a quick look at the actual map of the coastal areas there, I've marked where the majority of the strikes have been coming in. So in the Caribbean, slightly to the east of Caracas, very unrelated to the actual drug running mapping that we've just seen. Then, of course, why is Venezuela so attractive? Yes, we come back to the largest oil reserves in Venezuela and, of course, American investment in those oil reserves, which, again, has been some point of controversy between Trump and Maduro. But also the fact that you can have a look at the map again, but Colombia in particular, Gustavo Petro has actually said that he will come out militarily in support of Venezuela. Brazil is intimating the same thing. So suddenly Trump is not only facing Venezuela, it's facing three of the most powerful countries in Latin America. And as a result, what's he done? He's imposed tariffs on Colombia, withdrawn their funding or assistance. And of course, previously he'd revoked Gustavo Petro's visa at the UN when he'd strongly come out against the genocide in Gaza. And finally, let's have a look at a statement that Maduro himself made a few days ago in Venezuela to understand why they are a threat to US supremacy.
Que hoy la opción no es entre patria o muerte, es entre independencia y colonia, entre esclavitud y pueblos libres. Y les puedo asegurar, con mi vida y con la vida de todo un país, que jamás seremos patio trasero, colonia ni esclavo de ningún imperio supremacista. Ni hoy, ni mañana, ni nunca esclavo, ni colonia de nadie.
So this situation, which is rapidly escalating, should be watched very closely over the following weeks.
It absolutely should, Vanessa. Very, very emphatic there. And if you weren't able to hear then I would urge that you do go to the show notes and look at what it was that Maduro actually said there, because it was an extremely strong sentiment. Vanessa, thank you very much indeed. Now, I dare say you do make good use of the UK Column website, but I would like to particularly point you towards the search function on it, shown at the top right-hand corner, and indeed suggest that you should go to UK Column first for whatever it is you're searching. It's not a tiny ping-pong bat. It is a search facility. So please do make best use of it, because there is a huge wealth of information there going back over 20 years. And if you are in a position to consider joining or supporting us via a donation, joining us via a monthly, annual or lifetime membership, we would be very, very pleased to have you on board. Now, the UK Column shop has recently received these fantastic badges, no digital ID. Now, I would like to say, please do look for them and indeed buy them if you would wish, but there is a slight delay because we're waiting for more to come in. They have been so popular, but please bear with us. We will get them out, and they will be in stock again soon, but that shouldn't prevent you from ordering. So please do go ahead on that. Now, tonight's Germ Warfare, we've got Tim Hinchcliffe, and the interview there is titled On Balancing Progress and Privacy. And then going out tomorrow, Thursday, Mike Robinson is speaking to Professor Ela Bloomy, and that's about Sudan, another forgotten war indeed. And of course, we have covered that a little bit on the news in recent months, but not nearly enough, to be perfectly honest. So that will be an interesting interview for you to look at 1 o'clock tomorrow. And as mentioned before, on Monday, we'll just have a look at the preview for the next episode of 1,000 Words podcast.
I've kind of had enough already.
Yeah.
Is what I'm thinking.
Well, he stuck around for the duration. Is this my most challenging portrait yet? Tune in on Sunday at 7 p.m. for the first episode of 1,000 Words with James Delingpole.
I don't mind what people think. I do mind if they cannot produce a coherent explanation for it.
So that's Jake Fern painting and talking to James Delingpole, the first episode of which will go out at 7 o'clock on Sunday evening, and that should be fantastic. So please do take a look at that. Now, if you're going to be in Edinburgh on Saturday, the 1st of November, then please make your way to the Mound, where there will be a protest against digital ID, a rally against digital ID. And that, I think, is something that's a recurring event. But Saturday, the 1st of November is the date that's written down there. And now I would just like to remind you, of course, if you were not either there or there in person, or indeed watching on the live stream, that we had a very successful event in York at the weekend, and tickets are still available on the live stream. So if you haven't yet watched it, it's still there to purchase in the shop, and also you do get access to Protocol 7. Lineup of speakers, of course, shown on screen now. UK Column's own Ben Rubin, Liz Evans, who's of course presented several times on the news, Andy Wakefield, Tess Laurie, and Sir Julian Rose. Now, before you say so, we are aware of the issue that there has been in accessing Protocol 7. That is being resolved as we speak. So, again, please bear with us. Now, you saw an accidental preview earlier on in the programme, but Gemma Cooper has produced an excellent film which encapsulates exactly what it is that did go on in York at the weekend. And I'm now going to give you an insight into UK Column on location in York 2025.
Autumn, a time for contemplation, reflection, and letting go. But not here in York. Here it was time for something very exciting. UK Column on location. Our second sell-out in-person event of 2025. The subject, health. Our speakers, experts. Dr. Tess Laurie from the World Council for Health kicked off the day with an all-encompassing look at the corruption in global health policy.
WHO collaborating centers, and there are 800 of them in 80 countries. There are universities, there are universities, there are health ministries, there are national institutions and laboratories, there are regulatory agencies, our MHRA, there are military and bioweapons facilities, there are charities and other NGOs, and there are professional training bodies.
Then, UK Column presenter Ben Rubin gave an outstanding analysis of the UK's National Health Service.
Who's had an operation on the NHS? Lots of us. Who trusts the NHS? Right? That's interesting, isn't it?
UK column contributor Dr. Liz Evans moved the crowd with her talk on medical ethics. And one of the UK's original organic farmers, Sir Julian Rose, seamlessly linked soil and spirituality.
Let truth, wisdom, justice guide us forever onwards. Swords held high, forever spiritual warriors, forever committed to the glorious redemption of life.
All pioneers, all excellent. The UK column team also took to the stage to answer questions from the audience, a chance for some humour and fun.
I should be told off here, actually, because I haven't got a sticker on my car, but you're absolutely right. And based on this, I will get one on before I leave the hotel. There you are, that's my promise.
It might well turn out to be more than one. I will give details of Brian's registration after this talk.
Then finally, our keynote speaker, Dr. Andrew Wakefield. A rare chance to hear from a man who stood up to Big Pharma when no one else would dare. A man who lost everything but never gave up. He got a standing ovation before he even said a word. The day wasn't just about the speakers, though. Connection and camaraderie with like-minded souls in beautiful surroundings was just as important.
Today has been a lovely experience, really enjoyed it. It's been worth coming down from Glasgow for. It's been so lovely to meet the whole of the UK column team.
There is nothing like seeing people face to face, being able to talk to people, being able to connect, being able to network. I've met some wonderful people I already know, but also made so many new friends.
What I particularly like is that the presenters are so approachable. You know, they're real people. What you see is what you get, basically, and very professional.
I think just having that community, you know, you've got a community of people here who've come together, getting the spirit of it, really, the spirit of what the UK column's about.
I watch it every week. I watch all of them. I catch up every week. I love it. I consider it to be balanced, truthful, the only place where I get a really straight-up picture of what's going on.
Who was your favourite speaker?
I like Ben. Yeah, I like Ben Rubin. But they're all fantastic.
Tess Lowry, I really connected with what she said.
Tess and Ben were my favourite. To finish on Andrew Wakefield was just momentous. He brought me close to tears from what he was talking about.
I'm very impressed with the range and depth and quality of all the speakers. I can't choose the best, I'm sorry.
Our wonderful and extraordinary day ended on two big high notes. The launch of UK Column's new magazine and the dates for our 20th anniversary celebrations next year. People have already started booking. So you'll be attending?
Oh, definitely, yeah.
100% Sue's put it in the diary already. We will be there.
Yeah, 100%, yes, definitely be there for that. Looking forward to it already.
I would recommend anybody to come to any of these events. There is nothing like it. You can't compare it to just watching it on a screen. Definitely, every single event, I am there.
UK Column's 20th birthday will be a very special 3 days in the city where it all began. We've got some amazing things planned, and we'll see you there. Gemma Cooper for UK Column in York.
Worth watching at least twice, I'd say. It was an absolute stonker of an event, and the video will go up on the website, so please point people towards it, and don't forget that you can still buy the live stream in the shop. Now, Mark, you were there. You were a novelty, let's say, because of your normal place of residence. You were absolutely mobbed. How did you get on?
Yeah, it was the feeling of having groupies around, like when I was a rock star in my young days. Stretching the word a little bit, but it was nice to have such a warm fan base, and they were very appreciative that I was there.
Good.
Far exceeding my expectations, and my expectations were already high. So.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think it did exactly that. And Vanessa, you were much missed. But now you are going to talk to us about, one of the many instances of Zionism expressing itself in the UK.
Expressing itself, another very diplomatic term there, Charles. I would say sort of oppressing rather than anything else. But yes, and congratulations to everyone at UK Column for the event. It seemed to go down extremely well, and I was very sorry not to be there. But one day, when the Zionist movement is kicked out of the UK, I might be able to come back. So anyway, in previous news programs, we've talked about the case of Dr. Rahma Al-Atwan, just one of the British Palestinian doctors that is being effectively persecuted by the Zionist movement in the UK through the General Medical Council. And in this case, so she's had, I think, at least 3 tribunals so far. So the first tribunal found no need for any order. Now the GMC, sorry, could I just have that back for 1 second? The GMC demands suspension because I refused to basically tone down her speech that was very strongly against genocide. And one of the people that has been part of that persecution against her, and you can go to her X page and find the sort of smoking gun evidence of that, is Wes Streeting, of course, the Labour Health Secretary. And this is just one of the comments on one of Rahma's posts on X that refers to Wes Streeting's involvement. If we could just have the next slide now. Sorry, I'm messing around with your... So this is basically saying, stop these ridiculous claims on behalf of the Israel lobby. We will have to ask them for permission to leave our home soon. There could be some truth in that. Shame on Keir Starmer and Wes Streeting. Every single decent-minded person should condemn those committing genocide, which speaks volumes about our government. Never a truer word. Sad. And of course, Wes Streeting, this was a former article back in 2024 in Declassified UK. The whole article will be in the show notes. Guess what? Yes, Wes Streeting has been, I think, among the first of Starmer's administration to actually make various funded trips to Israel. Our friend, how the Israel lobby spent 30,000 on Wes Streeting. So again, we point back to their involvement with the Zionist movement in the UK and defending, of course, the genocide committed by Israel in Gaza and the West Bank. This is a video. Dr. Rahma, unfortunately, yesterday was actually arrested under the most incredible claims against her by British police. So let's just play this.
On what power? US pound. And what? Sorry? She's under arrest. Why? She's under arrest for 4 offences. Malicious communication times 3 and for inciting racial hatred. I will explain to you everything. I just need to get cut on you because, like I said, I don't know what is in the house. So Section 1 of the Malicious Communication Act and Section 127 of the Misuse of Public Communications Network. Again, on the 21st of July, at a pro-Palestine protest, which took place outside the Foreign and Commonwealth Office in King Charles Street. He gave a speech which amounts to calls for the eradication of Israel and implied support for all those involved in armed resistance against Israel. And what? Israel? For Israel, the entity of Israel, the state. Israel, another place?
Sorry.
I thought it's for the UK.
And implied support for all of those involved in armed resistance against Israel.
No.
Including organisations such as Hamas. Again, like
I was in front of the police when I gave that speech. You say that this is what you're doing for Israel. We're Palestinians.
We're not going to talk about
and we've had our family members and friends murdered. Are you doing this for Israel?
We're not to MP Wes Streeting comments that could be interpreted as anti-Semitic. Including anti-Semitic tropes which could be considered grossly offensive in character.
So, I mean, this is just quite incredible. The use of anti-Semitism to imprison an NHS doctor that has no complaints against her on the basis of her protesting a genocide committed by Israel. Very good news. Dr. Rahma, after a mass online protest and people actually attending the police station where she was taken, has been freed, and her lawyer is obviously speaking with her now. And then coming on to a second demonstration of how certainly Keir Starmer's government is, of course, fully supportive of Israel and the Zionist lobby. This is the case of the Maccabi fans, the Tel Aviv Maccabi fans. So British police have put out recommendations that, of course, they should be banned because of the risk of violence. Keir Starmer has condemned that decision. So somehow police force and intelligence are not capable of determining whether a group of fans are going to be a danger to the public, in this case, in Birmingham. He condemns the wrong decision to ban Maccabi Tel Aviv fans from the Aston Villa games. He says, we will not tolerate anti-Semitism. I do have to ask if these fans were either, let's say, Christian or Muslim or any other race, would there be any contention from Keir Starmer over their banning on the basis that they are extremely violent and present a threat to a British public in Birmingham? This is a previous article detailing why the Maccabi Tel Aviv fans with a record of violent rampages were really banned. And this is, again, a previous news report from Sky News. I think it's a video we have coming up next, yes. Talking about the attacks carried out by the Maccabi fans in Amsterdam. So let's roll this.
Social media videos verified by Sky News show Maccabi Tel Aviv fans tearing down Palestinian flags from outside of homes. Other social media videos appeared to show residents chasing Maccabi Tel Aviv fans. On Thursday, just before the game, crowds of Maccabi fans were filmed singing racist and anti-Arab songs. While a pro-Palestinian demonstration had been banned by the mayor over fears there would be clashes. Later that evening during the match, Israeli supporters appeared to disrupt the minute silence for Valencia flood victims with chants, whistles and fireworks. Maccabi fans were seen attacking locals as a police car can be seen driving by.
So I mean, I have to kind of smile rather wryly that Keir Starmer is defending the inclusion of these people in Birmingham with the high possibility of violence. And Nigel Farage also weighs in on behalf of Israel. This takes racial discrimination to a whole new level. I would argue it's not racial, but that's beside the point, I guess. Even Maccabi Football Club themselves have put out a statement actually condemning the bad behavior of their fans and saying that they need to weed out those elements. Of course, the huge majority of those fans are actually either former IOF or current reservists. And then finally, this is on X, which I thought was quite amusing. In other words, don't worry, there'll be at least one fan at the match to support Maccabi. And finally, I just want to show, which I find really disgusting as regards the response from Parliament to a statement by Zara Sultana of your party condemning the possible conclusion of Maccabi. So let's just play this.
Maccabi Tel Aviv's racist fan hooliganism cannot be separated from Israeli militarism. Many of these fans are active or former soldiers who have taken part in Israel's genocide in Gaza. They should be investigated for war crimes the moment they set foot onto British soil, not welcomed into our stadiums. And let's be clear, this Labour government is no innocent bystander. It has armed Israel's genocide, it has provided diplomatic cover, and it has shamefully denied that genocide is even taking place. So I ask the Minister, is there anything this Labour government won't do to defend the genocidal apartheid state of Israel?
Madam Deputy Speaker, I like the Honourable Lady, but I have to say that she is doing the people of Birmingham no favours with that sort of rhetoric.
I would argue, of course, that the government is doing the people of Birmingham no favours by potentially allowing violent, genocidal fans into Birmingham.
Exactly, Vanessa, and I'm going to continue with this story, not to sort of overdo it, as it were, but to look at the other side of it, particularly concerning police and how they're treated by government and how the Home Office should work with them rather than against them, and indeed the degree to which they should not be able to interfere. So we're just going to look at the statement that the West Midlands Police issued on the 16th of October, which in effect kicked this off. So that they say that the West Midlands Police supports the Safety Advisory Group decision as regarding Aston Villa versus Maccabi Tel Aviv football match, and this is the critical part. They say that this decision is based on current intelligence and previous incidents, including violent clashes and hate crime offences that occurred during the 2024 UEFA Europa League match between Ajax and Maccabi Tel Aviv in Amsterdam. Now, of course, as Vanessa has articulated, this didn't seem to be enough for the politicians in the United Kingdom, and only a couple of days later there was an urgent question asked in Parliament, which was just put on screen now, entitled "The Away Fans Ban." Nigel Huddleston, the Conservative MP, asked the Secretary of State for Culture, Media and Sport if she'd make a statement on the decision to ban the fans from attending. But of course, the language already has been changed in that the police and the Safety Advisory Group were very clear to make the case for the safety applying across the board, as opposed to being specific to one party or another. Now, they said, my apologies, Lisa Nandy responded to this question, and she got off, one might say, on the right foot by saying that it's a long-established principle set out in law that the police and Safety Advisory Group are operationally independent of government, and that it is for them to take decisions on safety, and that exactly is the case. But of course, she then went on to talk about the way in which, frankly, the government's dealt with everything pertaining to Israel for at least the last 2 years. And she went on to say, however, this decision has far wider implications, which may be the case, but it's certainly not the remit of the West Midlands Police to be swayed by those sorts of factors, whatever they may be. And this is precisely how operational independence should work, something which Nandy, and indeed government, does not seem to understand or adhere to. She went on to describe the decision as wrong because it's led to excluding a group rather than considering the range of other options. Now, it'd be worth pointing out that she shouldn't be privy to exactly what was discussed, but it's very unlikely that no other option was considered. And she goes on to speak about people holding strong views and lobbying government, and that people in this country are apparently free to protest peacefully, as well as being free not to attend events that they find unacceptable. She then goes on to say, however, they are not entitled to dictate who can participate in competitions, attend a football match, or walk the streets for fear of threats or reprisals. Whatever one's view on the events overseas, that is a fundamental principle that this government will fiercely defend. Now, they are not entitled to defend, as she quite rightly sets out, but then again, neither is the government. And just to exemplify this, I've done so before, but I think it does bear going into again. We're just going to look back to 2021 and the coronavirus enforcing restrictions, in which I point out that it was stated very categorically in that lockdown restriction enforcement was an operational matter for the police. This means police leaders and not national or local politicians decided whether and how to deploy their officers to lockdown enforcement. Now, the point about that, of course, is that 43 constabularies and those non-sort of regional all did exactly the same thing, absolutely shattering the whole idea that operational independence did exist. As Vanessa points out, the Prime Minister has, of course, weighed in as well. And not only he, but also the chair of the Culture, Media and Sport Committee, Caroline Dinenage, who has demanded an explanation. So she's said that the move to prevent away fans from attending the next month's match at Villa Park is extremely concerning and is at odds with the principle that football in this country is for everyone. It's extraordinary how suddenly football appears to have been made quite so important for this government. And I should absolutely point out that she is married. Caroline Dinenage is married to Lord Mark Lancaster, and he is currently serving as the defence export advocate for the United Kingdom. And of course, in that capacity, has visited Israel a number of times. This cannot be put to one side. Now, again, the club statement issued by Tel Aviv Maccabi says it is clear that various entrenched groups seek to malign the Maccabi Tel Aviv fan base, most of whom have no truck with racism or hooliganism of any kind, and are exploiting isolated incidents for their own social and political ends. Well, to set the context, I must thank Ian, a long-term UK column supporter, for pointing out that a recent example of a ban being handed down to West Ham in 2023 attracted absolutely no criticism from the government. And if you're wondering whether this is because the situations are different, then of course Vanessa's already alluded to this, but it doesn't really fit with the narrative that just on the 19th, the Tel Aviv derby, Hapoel versus Maccabi, was called off because of stadium violence. Frankly, the idea put out that this is not to do with legitimate concerns about violence is absolutely disingenuous in the extreme. And indeed, the article here from Israel National News quoted the Israel police, who said riots, disturbances, object throwing, smoke grenades, fireworks, injured officers, and damage to stadium infrastructure. This is not a soccer match. This is serious public disturbance and violence. So again, I have pointed out that this is an awful lot of attention for a football incident to generate, particularly when one thinks of how little the government have either passed comment on or acted on what has happened over the last 2 years in Gaza. Now, we are a little over on time. I'll just point you towards an article I wrote a couple of years ago entitled Home Secretary Picks a Side for Police, and I would encourage you to have a look at that because it does concern this very thorny issue of operational independence for police. Now, that takes us back to Mark, and as I said, we are approaching that time of year where the conference of the parties are to get underway. Now, what are we going to look forward to?
Well, the purpose of this report for now is to just give everyone a heads up that it's happening again, cover some key details without going into too much depth. But in early November into mid-November, there's both the Conference of the Parties, the 30th one, as well as a Smart City Conference. We'll talk about both. Now, the COP30, it's helpful to offer a little bit of background material. This is put on primarily under the auspices of the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. And what that convention is, Charles, is sort of a standing treaty-like structure or infrastructure into which or from which other treaties have stemmed, including the Kyoto Protocol in 1997 and the Paris Agreement itself in 2015. So it all attaches together like Lego, you might say. Let's go back to that previous slide just for a moment. And 3 through 9 November for the COP30 in Belém, Brazil, is a pre-sessional period, and the actual event is the 10th through the 21st of November, just for the record. That's an overview of the schedule. Now we'll move on from there. The United Nations framework that I mentioned is a key part of the Conference of the Parties, and this is something I found that seems to be very tangible about this event, because some of it is so politically correct and kind of vague. Oftentimes, they use vague, expanded language where you're not exactly sure always what they're talking about. But here it's quite clear. The technology mechanism was established by the Conference of the Parties back in 2010 to implement enhanced action on climate change technology development. Here we're getting a little more tangible and not pie in the sky, and transfer towards achieving what they're calling the full implementation of that 2015 Paris Convention, which is tied to the UN framework that I mentioned. That Climate Technology Center and Network, is implementing the joint work program of the technology mechanism for 2023 through 2027. So now we're looking back a little bit, but we're also looking ahead to 2027, which also includes the Technology Executive Committee, again, in emphasis, aiming to accelerate climate technology development and transfer in order to meet the Paris Agreement's goals. So they're pressing forward, they're pressing on the gas pedal here. They're trying to really tangibly get that Paris Agreement to have some life and have some duration, because Trump backed out of it in 2017 during the Bilderberg meeting of that year in the US. There's been other moves by the U.S. that have kind of weakened this whole thing, and they're really doubling back. They're really doubling down trying to make this happen. But anyway, we have some footage about also the Smart City Congress that's coming up. And this Smart City Expo Congress, now this happens every year in the same place in Barcelona, whereas the COP30 meetings move around to different locations. But this is coming up a little more imminently, the 4th through the 6th of November, as indicated, the Smart City Expo World Congress. And these images just kind of give you an idea of what it's about. Now, I've got a limited list of specifics about what they get into here, I believe. Here it is. Here's some of the smart city topics. This is just a smattering, a sampling. The opening session, the time for cities. And there's a lot of this language that indicates that they don't really like a lot of rural populations. They want to drive people into the cities, stack and pack. There's not a lot of value or time spent on rural development, individual farming, bottom-up agriculture. There's very little, if anything, ever said about that. It's always cities, 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 and in this case, smart cities. Also, 2030 investment trends in smart cities is another topic. What's next for urban resilience, cybersecurity in cities, and of course, our ever-present friend, sometimes foe, AI, for spatial mapping and analysis that has to do with urban planners and AI environmental footprint between hidden costs and green opportunities. So it's sounding a little bit pie in the sky there, despite their specific goals to, really solidify and advance on the Paris Agreement. But that's just a sampling. There'll be a lot more on this as these events come along, and I'll make an effort, of course, to cover them virtually. Attending them in person might be a little difficult logistically and otherwise, but there'll be many more details during and after these events happen, Charles.
Thanks, Mark. Yeah, and as you say, they are absolutely inextricably linked, and we will see how things do go this year. But I mean, the idea that they are pie in the sky perhaps is reassuring. Now, that's all we've got time for today. So, Mark, thank you very much indeed for joining me in the studio. It's been a pleasure to have you in here. And,
wonderful.
Speed you back, I would say, but we'll have to see how that goes. Vanessa, also thank you very much for joining, and don't forget there's Germ Warfare going out tonight at 7:00, and then Mike's interview with Ela Blumia tomorrow at 1:00. If you are a UK column member, please do stick around for extra. I am sorry that we had one or two technical difficulties, and as I say, exactly what the reason for that was will remain shrouded in a small element of secrecy, let's say. But thank you very much. And please do consider looking at the live stream from the event in York. It really was a terrific day, and there's a huge amount to learn from the presentations that were given. So that's up on the shop. But that's all for now, and we will look forward to seeing you again on Friday at 1:00. Bye-bye.